Hi, everybody. This is Phil Hands, the political cartoonist for the Wisconsin State Journal. I'm going to draw a cartoon today and let you guys follow along as I do it. I always start my cartoons with the lettering first. If I don't do the lettering first, I get kind of sloppy at the end. I get kind of excited to be finished with the cartoon, and I kind of rush through the lettering, which can make it look not so great. And the lettering is really the most important thing that I do in a cartoon because it's what people read. So I usually like to do that first while I'm still excited to be drawing the cartoon and I have lots of patience for it. Sometimes I change the font colors just to make some emphasis here and there, and then I'll start inking the cartoon. Now I penciled this out ahead of time, but now I'm going to add this ink to it. I use a program called Clip Studio, and I have Surface Pro tablet, which is what I'm doing all of this work on during the coronavirus quarantine, basically. At the office, I often draw on pencil and paper and do it analog. But now I'm drawing digitally from home during this pandemic, which is giving me the opportunity to share some of my drawing techniques with you guys, which is kind of fun. So I'm using kind of a brush. So I didn't like the way the toast looked here. So I'm going to redraw this. You can see the pencil marks there. And I often will do this where I just kind of don't like the way something looks and I'll redraw it. And then I can see I decided to make her hold it with her finger and her thumb like it was sort of disgusting, this piece of toast here. And that's sort of a different touch at the end of the cartoon, which is sort of a little humor in the drawing, which I'm always trying to go for. So that first part was the outlines. That's supposed to emulate a brush that I used for inking. This part that I'm doing now is just sort of adding some depth of shadow and some cross hatching to the cartoon. And this sort of the hatching, I feel like that's what makes a cartoon a political cartoon is the hatching. And I sort of do it out of habit. Maybe there's ways to use technology to make other gray tones, but I like the way that the cross hatching looks. So I'm going to keep doing it. Especially you can see the hair getting filled in nicely there with the line marks, and it just sort of makes it look a little old school, which I really enjoy. I'm going to add a little background. Here's one of the best things about working digitally is that I can just add a background after the fact if I decide somebody needs a background to it. Now I'm going to add some shading. This is usually a dark blue color that I add on top of everything. And this is my shading, gives everything a little bit of texture. And then I'm going to take this dark blue and I'm going to reduce it. You can see it's not as dark as it was. I knock it down to about 20% opacity. I'm going to start blocking in the colors. And here I just sort of drag and drop paint colors on top of the lines. I often work on separate layers so that it's easy to do the coloring here. So like you can see, I would do these. Here's just the outlines without the hatching, without some of the shadows in there. I often put down a purple color in the background to help me with the coloring. That way I can throw whites on and I can see exactly where all of the colors are going. I'm into purples and pinks now for whatever reason. It's a color I use a lot in my cartoons. This is my little standard flesh tone that I use. I'm blocking in the hair on top of the flesh. I always put the flesh and the hair always on separate layers. Changing the color of the toast. Now I have to change the color of the table because it's the same color I wanted the toast to be. So I just have to switch that around a little bit. And now I'm going to start working on the flesh tones, which is I will knock the opacity of the flesh tone back to about 50%, and then I'll start painting on top of it with that flesh tone again, and just adding some depth, and makes it look a little bit like a watercolor, which is a technique I like a lot to do in a political cartoon. It just makes it look a lot more rich and full. Adding 5 o'clock shadow of the dad. And I'm going to block in some of the pattern shapes, like the mess on the dad's apron. Highlights and the orange juice. Knock the background back and add some smoke for some humor. And that's the cartoon. I want to thank everybody for following along and watching the video today.